Yeah, I think it's live now.
Okay.
I haven't started getting the feedback from here. Let's see. Okay, cool. I have. So you're live. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks everybody. I see like about 5 people already like, on YouTube watching us. Yeah. So
Nice.
welcome everybody. Welcome, MS Prime. I don't know. You're going to have to, at some point. You're going to have to explain how you came up with MS Prime. It's really awesome. Yeah. I like your shorthand. Yeah.
Yeah.
So today on Exchange we have Salis Braimah. He's our guest for today, and he's a software engineer at zLabels in Germany. And he recently relocated to Germany. And so today in our conversation, we'll get to learn about the whole process of moving out of Ghana or relocating to a different country to work as a software engineer. Yeah, so I think we're already behind on some few minutes. Yeah, but I'd like to give the opportunity to MS Brime to introduce himself to the rest of us. So who is MS Brime?
Yeah, thank you, Francis. It's a pleasure for me to be on this show today with you. You being one of my greatest influencers and mentors. I mean, I can't believe I'm in this position. Yeah, so Salis Braimah is a 29-year-old software developer. Currently work with zLabels GmbH, a subsidiary of Zalando SE. I work as a JavaScript engineer at zLabels. Yeah, about the MS Brime moniker, my full name is Mohammed Salisu Haruna Braimah. Haruna is my dad's name. I never really use it. I always use the shortened form of my name, Salis Braimah. Even in Zalando, that's the name I have on record. But then MS Brime is just Mohammed and Salis put together, and Brime is a shortened form of Braimah. And I picked it up back in the day, every like Microsoft program was like MS PowerPoint, MS Excel, MS. So I just like kind of made the abbreviation to fit in. Yeah, to make myself feel like software.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
So, can you share with us how did programming start for you? How can you give us a bit of a rundown of how your journey has been? Yeah.
Yeah. So software for me, it wasn't exactly the path. If you had told me like maybe 15 years ago that I'd be a programmer, I would never believe you in a million years. Because I mean, when everyone knows when you're a kid, you are dreaming of being a doctor or something else. I was actually always saying I wanted to be an archaeologist, and my parents would hate it when I say that. Because we all know what an archaeologist is in Ghana. He's a history teacher. So yeah, for me, the journey actually started in 2010. I had my first stint in university in 2006. I went to Legon. I did bioscience for 2 years, and after some complications, some health complications actually, I had to defer. Then later I discontinued the course completely. And I think that was actually kind of a blessing in disguise for me, because I had never really sat down to think about my core strengths and what I really liked pursuing. You know, lots of people talk about, I'm not one of the Zuckerberg kids who was programming since they were like a kid. You know, I had like 2 years within which I kind of really went internal and kind of really started finding out the things I was good with. I was always good with electronics. I could always somehow get software like to work, and it wasn't like in the sense of like programming or anything. It was in the sense of just making things work on a computer. And I think by diving into editing all these weird files to get programs and things to do what I wanted, I kind of slowly crept into the software space. And so in 2010, when I had the opportunity, when I felt like I was ready to go back to school, I actually made an active decision to choose computer science. And yeah, that's for me where from there it was always to learn more about programming for me. Yeah.
Cool. So for you, have you, and so in the process of training yourself and becoming a software engineer, what have been some of the time that you felt like, okay, software engineering wasn't really for you, and you felt like it wasn't the right thing for you to be doing, or like the time that you really didn't have any pride in being called a software engineer or even working with computers? Do you have moments like that? Like, because I know for most of us, we have times where we're so high up here and times that we are so low down. So I'd really appreciate if you can share some of those experiences, because I think it helps. It helps when you realize that, okay, you're not the only person who is feeling this way.
Yeah.
People who have far, ahead of you have had similar experience. So, I mean, can you share some similar experiences in that regard?
Yeah, I think I've had a lot of those experiences. Most of the time it happens when I move to a new job, really, because most of the times I've almost always worked with a company or corporately, and most of the times you go to the company, initially you are so overwhelmed by all the things that they used. This was most profound for me in my first job after national service. Um, I had the opportunity to work at TXT Ghana, and I mean the team I moved in to work on an e-commerce platform after just doing HTML and just basic HTML and CSS, and there was so much more expected of me on the front end, right? And there was all this JavaScript stuff and all these plugins and things that I, at the point, I just didn't think I could ever be good enough to master or even control or use. And that was a very tough period for me. And I had to really kind of sit up and try and motivate myself to, just push ahead, because I was always late. I was missing lots of deadlines. I was always late to deliver. And sometimes I would deliver stuff that had huge bugs. And at that point, you start to think, this is the point at which you're making something close to decent money, And you start to wonder, will the company reassess your value? The value you're adding to them, And at that point, you start to think, maybe this isn't for me. But the good thing about software and the good thing about programming is if you're willing to put in the work, you can always improve. Maybe even in baby steps, but eventually everything that you think is difficult becomes a lot easier. And I think the lowest point for me was when, I couldn't get a login form to work. That was that was for me. Yeah, I don't know if most people know. It's kind of basic if you know something like PHP. You just put an action behind a form and you submit, and I mean, I had just had to make it work with Ajax, and I couldn't make it work. And I spent about 5 days, and I was really questioning if I had made the right choice. But it worked finally. I had like great colleagues at the time who told me, yeah, I mean, that's how programming is. Sometimes it will take you 5 days the first time, the next time it's probably like 10 seconds, you know? So I think, yeah, there have been some of those.
Very awesome. Yeah, I mean that's the life you have chosen.
Yeah.
But sometimes I think we put ourselves through those kind of issues because it's programming is something that can make you feel really dumb. Yeah,
Yeah.
you know. And
Yeah.
sometimes you feel like you're very dumb. You don't know anything because
Exactly.
you're trying to do something or you're trying to work on something and you just can't get it to work. And frustration sets in and you now start being so hard on yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are people who are not able to get out of that pit. I mean, they go down that rabbit hole and keep on going, and then they lose the motivation to continue, pursuing career in software engineering.
Yeah.
But like if you enjoy that frustration and have fun while you're at it, so for me personally, when I come across a challenging problem that or something that I haven't actually solved, a solution that I haven't come up with before, a new
Yeah.
problem, and I need to come up with a solution, and it's so overwhelming and challenging. I just enjoy the moment. I know that this thing I'll be able to do it. Just that it's going to take a while, or it's
Yeah.
taking a while, and it happens like that, and when I'm able to cross that bridge and get the work done, it brings a whole lot of fulfillment, and that just gives
That's
me
true.
a different level of motivation to keep on going. Yeah, so I mean the challenges will come, but when the challenge come, embrace it. Use the resources around you because that's what a lot of people don't do.
Yeah.
Identify resources, surround yourself like with those resources, people, form relationships. Then
Yeah.
when you're having challenges, when you feel like you're solving a problem that is way above your head, you reach out to those people, have conversations, learn from people.
Yeah.
Then you can solve that problem for that day, then move on to the next thing. Because that's how you grow, really. That's how you
Exactly.
grow.
I think you've touched on something very important because in the beginning for me, I had this issue where I was very hard-headed and was always trying to solve the problem myself, you know? I mean, you have so many people around you, but that you feel like this problem is so simple that if you ask people who are better positioned, I mean, they'll think less of you. But it's better for someone who you know who's close to you to think less of you than for you to, I mean, stay stagnant or not progress, you know? And for me, thinking back to that particular problem, I mean, you spend 5 days on a login form when you could have just asked someone who could have probably helped you um, who could have probably helped you. Francis? Hello?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I thought I had lost you.
No, I'm still here. I had to go and close my window because some kids are making noise outside, and we were just.
Okay. I thought my what I was saying was so boring that you left.
That's not what happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, how? What was your first project like? For me, my first project was a website for a nursing institution, and I got paid 200 cities for it, and that was like a turning point for me. How do you have a similar experience? Do you want to share that experience with us?
Yeah. My first website was wow. It was something very static, and I did it for someone when I was in university, and I got paid 30 CDs for that. And that was
30 cities, man.
30 CDs.
Wow.
I mean, that money was gone as soon as it hit my palms. But
Can
I
imagine.
mean, yeah, at that time,
This was which year?
this was maybe 2012. I mean, yeah.
Cool.
But I mean, it wasn't a lot of money. But it was a nice project to work on, and I think the fact that someone was willing to pay for me for something that I had made, which was I mean, comparing to my current situation, something very horrific and horrible. I mean, I think that was a good boost. I mean, that kind of paved the way for me to go on and improve myself and try to get more jobs, try to get better at what I was doing. So then maybe I could ask for higher, I could invoice higher, you know?
Yeah, I get you. And I mean, this goes to, talk a little bit about a situation currently. Most people have, grown to know that software engineering or technology related jobs are lucrative. Like,
yeah,
they are paid well.
Yeah.
And so that has gotten into the minds of people who are even upcoming. So junior developers, they are upcoming and they know that, okay, software engineering roles or technology roles are supposed to pay so well. And so when you approach them and you have a very small amount of money, the person doesn't want to even, take up the job too. Because I know definitely now, if you go to somebody who is starting his journey in software development and you offer the person 30 cities to build you a static website, definitely the person won't take it. Yeah. And I mean, I don't even think that the person will take 200 cities.
Yeah.
What I really have to say about that is it's the fact that IT jobs pay so well doesn't mean that at any level they're going to pay so well.
Exactly.
At some point, you have to value the experience that you get by working on projects or by working with people.
Exactly.
Yeah. If you prioritize the education, the experience you are getting by working with people or by working on actual projects, that would eventually pay you off.
Yeah.
Because once you start working on projects in the future, you have that experience to take on your next job with that similar set of experiences. Yeah, but if you focus so much about the money and you say, okay, today this guy wants me to build a website for him, but he's saying that he's paying me 200 cities. 200 cities is too small. I can't buy anything with 200 cities, so I won't take it. I'm waiting for a bigger money. So let's say 1,000 Ghana cities or 4,000 Ghana cities before I actually develop a website for the person.
Yeah.
I mean, that one really works so well. Yeah, I mean, there's also that general argument about the fact that developers are not paid well, especially in Ghana. I know I'm a testament to that. Yeah, I know that some developers are very good at what they do and they get taken advantage of. Yeah. So I mean, there isn't really a one size fits all. I mean, you have to be true to yourself that you're not starting, you don't have a lot of experience. If somebody wants you to work on a project, you just have to take that opportunity, work on that project, and gain some experience. Because one thing is the experience you gain working on that project, nobody can take from it.
Exactly.
I've worked on projects that, I mean, I didn't get paid for as I was supposed to, but by working on that project, I built some particular set of experiences by working on that project. And if the money was given to me, I'm sure I probably would have done something with the money. But the experience alone, because I was the one who was building the software, and I was the one spending the sleepless nights, and I was the one who put all those thinking into that software, and all of that has developed me in a very particular way.
Yeah.
So if for nothing at all, the experience is good. So I think I'm rambling. Yeah.
I mean, Bubu on DevCongress, he has a saying that I'm very fond of.
Yeah.
And he's always saying, don't do it for the money, but don't do it without the money. Because at every point in your career, you have to have a certain value that you place on yourself.
Yeah.
And it's one of the best things, knowing how much you're worth,
Yep.
you know, and that always allows you to be able to pick your projects well and work on the best projects. And sometimes it's more about what I can get from the project aside the money, you know. So don't do it for the money, but don't do it without the money. If it's a really good project and there is some money, just weigh it out. If
Yeah.
it's a really good project and there's no money, if it's not your own thing, I can't willingly advise you to take on such a project. But like you were saying, it's not one size fits all. Somebody might become the next John Skeet working on a freelance project for free. So
yeah. So there's also one thing that I've noticed between you and Bubu. You guys quote each other.
yeah.
Yeah, because I think Bubu did a talk at I think DevCongress, and he had a slide on there where he was quoting you, and now you are quoting him. That's nice. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, he's one of the people. He's one of the people I've learned a lot from, in terms of prioritization, especially when you're working on a project and you're trying to deliver things to people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot you can learn from other developers, not just in code, but in life and in handling relations with other people in general. Because I think there's a wealth of talent, and everybody has gotten to their level through different routes.
Yep.
And it's just when you tap into other people's experiences, you really find out that, there's a lot that has gotten them to the level they are at. Yeah.
Cool. So I know you are big on JavaScript. Would you say that's your favorite language? If that is your favorite language, how do you arrive at that language? What is the history behind you being so fascinated with JavaScript as a language?
Well, JavaScript was the first language that showed me any love. Because it's the language I've worked with the longest, and it's the language that pays my bills. So of course, I think I'm very fond of it. I tried Java in the beginning, and that didn't go too well. I tried to use the languages I was being taught in university, and those were C++ and Java. And anyone will tell you as a beginner, starting with those languages is, it's kind of one of the things that could make you reconsider, programming. But luckily for me, there was a lot going on in web development, and I just picked up JavaScript, and I love the fact that it was so easy to write, and you could have instant gratification. You could open a browser and see, you write a small script and you add two numbers and do a document.write, and you see 1 + 1 is equal to 2 on a page. That was nice. That was better than having a Java program compiling for 5 minutes and then telling you that there was an error. So then, for me, that was basically the biggest, that was basically how I got into JavaScript. And as I progressed, I kind of started liking it more because there was so much that was being introduced to the language. There was so much that people were doing with it. And I think it's one of the best languages to know, and it's one of the best ways to learn programming. Yeah, if you're really serious about programming, I mean, along the line, you'll figure out that every language does something better than the rest. But I think for grasping the basic concepts of like programming or computer science, JavaScript is one of the best languages to start with.
Okay, and I mean one of the things that frustrates people a lot is how quickly things move in the JavaScript landscape. I mean, how do you deal with that? Like every day you wake up and there's a new framework, there's something new, there's a new tool to work with
Yeah.
in JavaScript.
Yeah. I mean, that's. I mean, you know, the JavaScript guys. I mean, all of us, we're all hipsters, you know. But the fact that new frameworks pop up doesn't mean you have to use them, you know. And one thing I've come to realize is that if you know the language and you know it very well, then you can probably work with any framework. You know, you just have to spend like a week or two, learn the inner workings of the framework a bit, and I think you can be productive. You know, so I think it's more about pacing yourself, um, understanding the problem you're trying to solve. I mean, in my current company, in Zalando, what they have is a tech radar, and what they do is whenever any of these new frameworks or things come out, there's a team that evaluates it, and then they put it on the radar. Maybe if we're going to adopt it, or if we're going to try it, or you know, for future projects. And based on that, you choose what you work with. You know, but personally, you can also, I mean, you can try them out. You can see what these new languages offer, maybe to learn new paradigms in programming. But the good thing about frameworks is they never have any features which are not present in the language. You know, not as in, they never add anything new to the language. Everything a framework does can be done natively in the language. And so if you find some very good paradigms from one language, from one framework, I mean, you can easily port these over to whatever you work with. You know, so for me, it's more about having a deeper understanding of the language itself, and then you choose your framework as the battles come.
So, will you say you fancy React more than Angular, or like you have with all these myriad of frameworks in JavaScript, do you have a favorite one that you always reach out to use? Or maybe, I mean, jQuery too is there. So,
Okay. I can't mention my absolute favorite on air, but I think you and I, we know.
you don't want to make enemies.
Yeah, you and I.
Identify yourself.
But yeah, I think React is a really good framework. It handles lots of cases very well, and it borrows from a very strong framework, which I had the opportunity to work with, which is Elm. And the principles in Elm and React are very similar. And that's if you combine React with Redux, then you have kind of an Elm-like architecture, you know. And I think if you work with Elm, then you really get to appreciate what unidirectional data flow is all about, and pure functions and side effectless functions. I mean, so for me, yes, React is a really good one. I've done a bit of Vue. I've done some. I did Angular when I tried Angular when it was Angular 2, and the next thing I knew it was 4. I think now maybe there are 10 but I haven't been following. I just stopped following them once they stopped counting sequentially.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did you do Angular 1 or you just started from Angular 2?
And I did Angular 1, and Angular 1 was it was very good at the time it came out. It was a new take on JavaScript, I think. Uh, at the time, Backbone and some other frameworks had really taken were really doing well. But then what Angular brought, the modularity it brought was really good. And it was kind of hard working with Angular 1 because there were always updates and there were always these changes that broke what you did. And one of the things I didn't like was when I think when Angular first shipped, Angular 1, they had a built-in router, which was ng route or something. And kind of like 2 months into the project I was working on, I realized that nested routing didn't work. And about a month later, they had a whole new package for routing for Angular, which was external to it. So then working with Angular 1 kind of made it, the whole experience, not having everything kind of pre-packaged, kind of put me off a bit. I mean, and the learning curve for Angular is also very steep. I mean, I think I tried Ember at the time too, and it was because at the time Ember and Angular were kind of like the two frameworks that were competing. Yeah.
At that time there was no React.
No, I mean maybe there was, but maybe Facebook was keeping it to themselves.
Yeah.
We will never know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can you describe to me, or can you share with us the IDE or code editor that you use, and what are some of the customizations that you can't do without those code editors?
Yeah. So um, currently my most used IDE is VS Code. I mean, by far right now, I
Okay.
think it has the most like integrations and everything. It's become a staple for me.
That you have that makes you so productive that you want to share?
Yeah, so I have the ES6 code snippets. I have live server. I have React standard style snippets. I can't, let me see, I have Vue2 snippets. I have ESLint. I have CSS auto prefix, Jasmine snippets. I mean, there's a lot of them. I think the ones I really can't do without React standard style snippets, CSS auto prefix, ESLint, and import cost. I mean, those ones are always like, I think they're basic for for that IDE. I used to. I know some people might blacklist me for saying this. I used to use NetBeans because
Don't worry, no judging. You're not judging, man.
I'm pretty sure I can feel myself being judged right now. But I wasn't using full-blown NetBeans. They actually have a version, NetBeans 8.2, which was actually for web development, and they had lots of React support built in, and it was really nice. And I mean, the fact that you didn't have to the fact that you didn't have to make any customizations, you just install it and everything is up and running. It automatically detects when you're programming with ES6. It can help you complete your imports, I mean, without any extra extensions. But I think right now you can get all of this through extensions in VS Code, and VS Code is much lighter. I mean, it's not that like, if you have a really good computer, you won't feel the you won't have any performance issues with NetBeans, but I think right now VS Code is just a lot lighter. There's so much more you can add to it, and there are not a lot of plugins for NetBeans. So then, yeah, I've made the switch to VS Code right now.
Okay, cool. So one thing that I want us to talk more about is your current job. Yeah, I mean, I think in the history of DevCongress Exchange,
Yeah,
I think the guests that have been on Dev Exchange have always been people who are on the ground, like in Ghana or maybe in any other African country. But for you, you've relocated from Ghana to Germany, and you're currently working in a company, Zalando, which is an international company, but you're working from their Berlin office, right? So what I am curious about, and what I believe other people are curious about in the community, is how it all started for you. How did you discover the job? What was the process? What was the process applying for the job? How gruesome was it? Like, what kind of preparation did you do? Because I believe there are some people who are already, established, working in the Ghanaian tech community, but maybe they want to level up and maybe relocate like you've done. Yeah. So any pointers, any tips that you think will be helpful to other people who want to also start working with people outside or companies outside of Ghana? That would be really awesome.
Yeah. If you're watching this and you're not on DevCongress, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe you're not a programmer, but if you're a programmer or you're a developer, you want to be a developer, please join DevCongress right now. And that's very important for what I'm about to share, because it all began on DevCongress. There's a service. Man, I should be telling them I'm giving them free like advertisements. Yeah, there's a company, Van Hack, and the CEO of Van Hack, he was on DevCongress one afternoon. He posted a message about working with companies abroad. And I think Van Hack is a startup. At the time, they had very few numbers. And he said anyone who was interested should reach out to him. So then, I mean, at that point in time, I was kind of like on contract, not really tied down to any company. So I sent him a message. I said his name is Ilya. I sent him a message, and I mean, he was very friendly. I mean, immediately I sent him the message. He replied, and we were talking a lot. He was telling me about what Van Hack was. So basically, they're a startup that tries to connect international developers and talent in other parts of the world with companies who are finding it hard. And then he gave me the link to the app. I joined, but for like a month, I didn't verify my account. And then I think he came back and he talked to me. He asked me if I had like subscribed or had registered for the like service. I told him yes, but I hadn't gone through verification, and he told me I should try to get myself verified. And so I did. I got myself verified, and he asked me. So to verify for Van Hack, first of all, you have to take a coding test. And I know how some people or most people feel about coding tests, but for me, I always take this word of advice from John Summers, right? He's also a guy on YouTube. He has a channel, Simple Programmer. He has lots of good content on lots of things pertaining to software development and programming. And I think I agree with him. Most of the time, these coding tests are not about they're not about ability. Maybe sometimes they're used to measure your ability, but for companies like VanHack and all these other software companies, they give you a good chunk of time to take the test. So for me, if a company is willing to give you 2 weeks to take a programming test, then you not being able to prepare yourself, right, to take the test and maybe do well on it is kind of like what it tells the company something about you. Because if you can't maybe sacrifice 2 weeks of your life to get ready for a programming test, then can you sacrifice 2 weeks of your life to work on something I need to deploy in 2 weeks? You see, that's how I think about it. That's how he explained it to me. And there's another thing that most of the time, we don't rise to the level of expectation. We actually fall to our level of training. So then a coding test is kind of like gauging your level of training, right? We can always expect if you are able to pass a coding test relatively well, then it means your level of training is high. And then it means the other tasks, which are maybe not even anywhere close to the coding test that you have taken, will be very easy for you. They can count on you to fulfill those duties or tasks that they give you. Yeah, so that was just a side note on coding tests. I know they are not a fair assessment, I know, but if you can take the time to just put in a bit of work, it really separates you from the people who say that they won't take programming tests out of principle. I mean, if you have a really huge CV, a huge resume, right, then maybe it's a bit insulting if you're sent a programming test. Honestly, if you're someone who has 6 years or 5 years of experience and you have a lot to show for what you've done, then I can agree with you. But if you're someone like me who only has 2 or 3 years of experience, I think you should swallow your pride. So, yeah, I took the test, I did the language verification, and then they allowed me to apply to jobs. You don't really see the name of the company, you just see the job description, and you have to apply for jobs that your skill set matches. And so at the time, I was trying to really narrow down. I had worked in lots of companies where they want you to do full stack work, but take maybe back end or front end pay. And so I was like, okay, why don't I just find a front end or back end job, and then just take the pay of one of those developers, and then you can develop anything else outside of office hours. So I was looking mainly at front end jobs, and like I said at the time, VanHack really didn't have a lot of members, and maybe probably by not a lot, I mean 1,000 or 2,000. And I joined up. I applied, and I was lucky enough to be called for one of the hottest jobs. I think Zalando was really trying to get people for that particular role, but most of the people weren't passing their interviews. So then it was really a job where you would get called quickly, but then most people didn't make it past maybe the first round. So I applied to that. I think a week later, I was contacted by a recruiter from Zalando, and Ilya was kind enough to organize a session. This was all for free on their free plan, because at the time they didn't have any people, so they really needed success stories, right? So then he was kind enough to organize a mock interview. He had some really good people talk to me and kind of like prepare me for my HR interview. And when I had that interview, it was really smooth and it was really easy. And I'm thankful that I had that kind of preparation and that kind of help from them. So from there, I had to take another coding test after the Van Haar coding test. And that was a Zalando coding test, which was a coding test from Codility. And just like every other Black man, I thought I could beat the system. So I went to Codility and tried to solve almost every single question I could find that had anything to do with JavaScript. But I mean, I think I still had the sense of reason to talk to Ilya, and I talked to another guy from Van Hack. I don't know if he's still with them, Gallo. And he was telling me that most of these companies don't use the tests that these companies like Codility have, like the stock test. They make custom tests and they let you take those. So then I had 2 weeks to write that test. So then I spent another week just brushing up on algorithms and brushing up on syntax, lots of stuff. And true to like what Gallo said, it was a very custom test. It was nothing I had ever seen before. But lucky enough for me, I had done my homework, and I got I got a good score. I mean, I thought it was a good score. I didn't know if they would think it was a good score. And I was called back after some time, after 3 weeks. So I thought maybe, I mean, it was a high score for me, but maybe not a high score for them, because I was getting high scores for the test cases, but then for efficiency, you know, in Codility, they measure efficiency and stuff like that. The scores weren't very high for those, so that brought my overall score down. But they still called me back. And yeah, after that, I had to go through a round of 3 interviews with different developers from Zalando back to back. And so that was a 3-hour session, which I had with 3 different developers on 3 different fields. There was one where you had to explain your answers in the Codility programming test. So then you didn't just write the test, they brought it back and you had to walk them through your solution. And you had to, for some of them, I think for the last one, they asked me to try and make it more performant, more efficient. And I mean, I had some time to reflect, so I was able to do that for them. The next one was more about architecture. They kind of they throw you a question about a system and they kind of ask you how you would go about building it. And that's just to see if you know how things work, or you have a general idea of how software is built. And then there was a last one, which was more or less everything to do with more front-end development, front-end technology, terminology, yeah. So yeah, that was kind of the process, and I think it's very similar for most other foreign companies. I've talked to some people who say they've had similar processes. Some actually have more interviews, some have up to 5 interviews. I know someone who had 7. So yeah,
Wow.
someone actually had 7 interviews. And so if you want to do this, if you're looking to relocate, what you need to know is, even if you go through a company like Van Hack or relocate.me, there's still a bit of resistance, because the company is spending a lot of money and investing in bringing someone from another country into a different dynamic, into a different culture. And one thing that lots of developers need to develop is programmers need to develop. And I know this for a fact because I used to be one of them, is that people skills and soft skills are probably the most important skills that you can have as a developer. For me personally, I'm kind of an ambivert. So I think maybe it helps me a bit. I'm okay. I mean, I'm not too introversial, so I mean, I'm able to communicate with people and interact, but then I'm also able to keep conversations and interactions very civil and more social and informal, kind of casual, formal, on that kind of level, you know, and people in these countries kind of like that kind of interaction more than people who just answer a question and then, you know, that's it. They're waiting for the next question. They like it to be you to be conversational. They like to know how you're like, who you are, without having to ask you questions about yourself. So then for me, it was more about one thing I always preach: honesty. When they ask me questions and I don't know the answer, I just tell them point blank. I know that I don't know the answer to this question, or maybe I'm not too, I'm not what adept enough to comment on the question or give an honest answer on this topic, you know. But then maybe you can, but that doesn't mean you say that outright. You know, you can maybe say something to explain that maybe, yes, I've read around it. I know that the concept exists, right? I've heard about the concept, but then I can't comment any further. I can't explain any deeper than just knowing or hearing of the technology. But then it also helps your case if you are able to answer lots of questions. So maybe for every 5 questions, if you say you don't know the answer to one, that's okay. If you're saying you don't know the answer to every single question, that's that's definitely not okay. That's honest, but I'm sorry.
Cool, good stuff. Very, very comprehensive. Yeah. So you're saying that the folks at Mahag, you know, helped groom you at no charge.
Yeah, absolutely no charges. Everyone is, whenever I tell anyone about this, they can't believe it, but it's true. Maybe now it's changed because right now you go into their Slack channel and they're over like 10,000, 20,000 members. And this is what it is, right? Because they, in their first year, they got 50 people hired. In their second year, they were only like 100 people hired. And in the third year, there were 300 people hired. So that's 200 people in a year. And now I think they have people hired almost every other day. So like the community has really grown. And since it's no longer a startup now, they can charge more because they have lots of success stories. And I think Ilya has done a fantastic job. I think it's hard for him or for the team themselves to kind of keep this going for free for such a long time, especially when they're gaining so much traction. But in the beginning stages, I mean, it was, for me, some of the best preparation or tutoring I've gotten for free ever in my life. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So I mean, I need to make a note here. It's really not only Ilya who's inside or who is in DevCongress. They have one recruiter from DevCongress who is, I think, who is currently on DevCongress. So he's based in Nigeria.
Yeah.
And on DevCongress is Ola, something like, his name is Olakunle Makanju, something like that. Yeah. But at Ola, you should be able to, you know, send him a message and find out whether there are any roles that he can help you fill working outside. So I'm sure that maybe now Ilya would probably be too busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I actually always wondered about the business model for Van Hart. I mean, whether they were getting developers relocated so that maybe they would take the first month's salary or they would take a commission
Oh,
on
I
the
mean,
salary and stuff like that. So
yeah,
those are things that I always wondered about. It's good that you clear that up, that they don't put that burden on you. Maybe you pay a one-time fee to be part of the community, then once you get a job, yeah.
yeah.
Cool. So how was the actual relocation, the getting a visa and getting relocated to Berlin? How was it?
I think it varies from company to company, right? But I think Zalando are very like thorough when it comes to this stuff. So for me, they sent me all the documents I needed. They sent me like everything I needed actually. And so the process was really quick. All I had to do was wait for my contracts and everything to arrive. And I was able to get like an appointment. The hardest part is actually getting past the people at the gate of the German embassy. There are a couple of folks just like me and you, our own Ghanaian people are the
Yeah.
ones who will try to stifle you. Yeah, because the truth is, I was supposed to start in February, but I made an appointment at the embassy. I went there and all my papers, everything was intact, and they told me I had booked wrongly because I was coming to work. He said I had to book for a long stay visa, and I had booked for a short stay visa. And the truth is, all the appointments and everything are the same. On the day I actually went in there, short-term visas, long-term visas, everything, we all went to the same place, right? So they didn't allow me to uh, to have my appointment that day. So I had to schedule another appointment, which was 2 weeks later, which meant I couldn't start in February and I had to start in March. Yeah, so that actually prolonged the process. And I kind of knew what they wanted, but just to come back to go a bit like native Abroni Bayinti, I just I just decided not to give them the pleasure of what they wanted from me. And so I just talked to my recruiter in Zalando, and they said it was fine. They said they would adjust my start date. I had the appointment 2 weeks later, and within 5 days, my visa was approved. So then I don't know, it depends from company to company, but if you have all the requisite documents, and especially in the EU, in Germany in particular, if they consider things like software development and IT special skills, and they have a high need for those kind of individuals in the country right now. And so I think most of the visas for such purposes are really fast tracked. Yeah.
Oh.
Me.
So I think we've been at this for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I mean I just take a little time to mention that the folks that are watching on YouTube, if you have a question that you would like me to ask MS Brian, please you drop it inside the chat box so that I'll be able to. I think there are some questions there. Let me see whether I can pick up a few questions from there. So after that, then you can show us the demo you have. Yeah. So I have a question from Andrew. He's asking, how do you flash the digest cycle in order to update a DOM? And I mean, I don't think you're going to take this one. I don't think you're going to take. Yeah, this question is more like on Angular 1. Yeah, I mean, I think he's asking you that question. He's just being himself. Like, let's move on. I don't think you will. Okay, so there's another question from Andrew. He's saying, why is Vue.js your favorite framework?
Why is Vue.js my favorite framework?
Yeah.
I didn't say Vue.js was my favorite framework.
Okay, that's fine. Let's move on. You also had another question. I think you may have answered that question. How did you find your current job? So yeah, you answered that question.
Yeah.
Let's go on another. What should a developer do to stand out? To stand out more amongst peers?
Huh. What should a developer do to stand out more? I think every developer is different, but to stand out, I think you have to make sure that you really take your career by the reins. You go anything you try to learn, if it's a language, if it's a framework, you commit yourself to learning it 100%, and you go as deep as you possibly can, and you create that kind of distinction, right? And for some people, maybe it feels like everyone at this point in time with so much information proliferation, right? Lots of people can get to that level. So after you get there, then you have to learn how to be a human being, because as programmers, sometimes we forget how to be this, right? We forget that at the end of the day, as much as you might hate it, and trust me, sometimes I hate it, you have to interact with human beings. And I think, like I'm saying, I didn't want to believe it, but I've read lots of books, and seen lots of, I've watched lots of videos of people uh, in very good positions as developers who can't speak enough about soft skills as a software developer. You know, so first of all, make sure you know your stuff. Then the next thing is make sure you know how to tell people you know your stuff, but not bruise anyone's ego. You know, so I mean, you can tell the CEO that you should know how to tell the CEO that what he's asking you to do is not in the best interest of the company without making him not feel like the CEO, something like that.
Yeah, that's that. I totally agree.
Yeah.
I had like in my, I must say, like I used to be very direct, and I wasn't diplomatic at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't remember. It was one time that I was working at a company, then the CEO was saying that I'm very arrogant. So
Yeah.
I was very surprised when he said that I was arrogant. And so the CEO said that I was arrogant, and the CTO said that I'm assertive. I shouldn't worry. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I mean, if you say something I don't think is correct, I'll point it out. I didn't really care if you're the CEO or what. Yeah, and it was. I mean, it was basically what youthful exuberance. I mean, most of these things I didn't know that. Okay, were things that I didn't have to say, or it had to only stay in my head. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I said some things that I probably shouldn't have said. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I was probably too bold to say those things, but I really shouldn't have said those things. Yeah.
Yeah. You see, so I'm saying this is something you learn with experience, and hopefully some people can look at themselves now. Yes, you are the best React developer. Yes, um, you can build as many microservices as you want. You can make you can minify as many files and build an entire platform and use only like 10 kilobytes of JavaScript. But if people don't want to work with you, you'll have a very hard time.
Yeah.
You'll find it very difficult. So it's something people really need to work on.
Okay. There's another question here from Nana Osafo or something. he's asking, is it good to know lots of languages or just build on the one you know very well?
This is, I guess it depends, right? But being a jack of all trades and a master of none in this current day is it's not something I'll advise you to do. I can advise to learn lots of languages myself. I know a bit. I know some Python, I know some Java, I know some PHP, and then I have my JavaScript. You understand? But you have to have one language that you know very well, that you're very confident in, because at any point in time, right, you have to be able to sell yourself as something, and you can't sell yourself as a full stack developer when you're only 10% good in 20 languages, that just don't fly. You can probably get away with selling yourself as a full stack developer if you're really good at backend and databases in one backend language, in databases, and maybe even 20 or 30% of front end, or even one backend language, 20% databases, 30% front end. You can sell yourself as a good as a full stack developer, right? If
Yeah.
you are 30% one backend language, 30% databases, and 30% front end, you will find it very hard. I'd rather you would be much better served being 90% in one language than 30% in like 20 languages.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nana Osafo is asking another question. He wants to find out, can you give me a general definition of a full stack?
A general definition of a full stack.
Yeah.
I don't know what I can't really understand the question.
I think where he wants to find out is how do you describe a full stack developer? So if you say I'm a full stack developer, what does a full stack developer do and all of that?
Well, it depends. I think the definition has changed with time, right? In the beginning, a full stack developer was someone who was back-end databases, front-end, right? But right now, being a full stack developer, there's a lot more that is expected of you, especially in larger companies. They expect automation, CI, CD, continuous integration, and continuous delivery. They expect front end. They expect Amazon Web Services or some kind of cloud platform knowledge. So then one backend language, database knowledge, front end knowledge, and orchestration knowledge. That's full stack right now for me. Then cloud service knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to add to that, I think if you work at a company that is heavy on AI and machine learning stuff, if you
Yeah.
say you're a full stack developer, you should probably know your way around those technologies too.
Yeah.
You have to be strong in ML and AI stuff
Yeah.
to earn yourself that title. I mean, it's basically, in simple terms, full stack just translates into being comfortable working at any level in the whole application infrastructure. So if you have, so the company has a product that customers are using and they're making money off. I mean, if you're a full stack developer, you should be able to do stuff on the front end, do something on the back end, and also services and pieces of other software that tie in together to make this product work. You should also be able to work in those areas. Yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. Another question from Andrew. He wants to find out, okay, so he's asking, what advice will you give to someone who is just starting out?
What advice would I give to someone starting out?
Yeah.
The advice is, if you're doing it, don't do it for the money. Because if you watch the money, then people like Francis would have stopped this thing a long time ago. I'm very sure. I know. Just make sure that you're sure about that this is the career path, or this is what you want to do. And one, join a community. Like I said, DevCongress is there. It's open. I mean, one more. There's all the help you could ever possibly want is in DevCongress. Just sign up, and Nancy will welcome you. Then, if you have any problems, there are a ton of guys who are willing to answer. Stick to the books. I always find books are very in-depth. But then there's a course that I would recommend to anyone who is starting the programming journey. There's one course I'm particularly fond of on Coursera, which is learning how to learn, or learning about learning. It's one of the gold courses on Coursera. It's a free course, and it really teaches you how to learn, and it teaches you about the peculiarities of your personal peculiarities of your learning process. And from there you can choose how you want to learn. And that's the thing. Never give up, because like I was saying, sometimes something like a login form can get you down. But if you can persevere, and if you don't focus too much on the money, and you are sure that this is what you want to do, then yeah, just keep doing it, keep persevering, join a community, go for meetups, read books, watch videos, and improve yourself.
Okay, cool stuff. David is on the chat and is asking, how do you deal with burnout, or better still, how do you prevent it?
Well, burnout is a real thing, but I think anyone who one good thing about the atmosphere or the environment at least in Zalando, is it's very relaxed. But I think as a developer, to kind of mitigate burnout, I think at some point in time we all get burnt out, especially if you're working on one particular project for a long time. But I think is to have other things that are extracurricular. I think it's very healthy to have other hobbies outside of programming. Programming can be your hobby. It can be something that you love doing, but I advise to have something aside programming. For me personally, I like sports. I love football. If I feel like I've been programming for too long, sometimes I just like to take a break by maybe indulging in more sporting activities. And it's hard to deal with. I know it's hard to deal with burnout in Ghana, because your company is always, if you're working corporate, then your company is always trying to deploy something the next week, and it feels like you're in an endless cycle of programming. Sometimes, I don't know, you have to just find a strategy that works for you. You have to draw your boundaries. It might not work, but then you're left with a decision to make. But for me, it's about pacing yourself. Programming is good, but if you do too much of it, it could get boring really fast. So you just have to pace yourself, find other hobbies, find other things to do outside of programming, maybe find other projects to contribute to outside of what you do mainly, you know, and I think that can mitigate burnout.
Okay. So I don't know, do you still want us to go and take a look at what you have to show in terms of demo? At this point, I feel like I've sucked a lot of energy. I've sucked a lot of energy from you, and I want to give you the permission to say that, okay, I think maybe demoing something now probably not be a good idea. So maybe next time. Yeah. If you have the energy to also do it, that's fantastic. We can go and do that.
I don't, maybe I don't know if some people might be disappointed. But I don't know. Maybe I could just try to share something quickly. It wouldn't be anything too over the top. Maybe
Okay. I think that's
something.
work. Yeah.
Yeah, something. Maybe something quick.
Yeah. So you can then do the demo. Then afterwards, I'll go back to the chat to get the rest of the questions. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
So I need to share my screen, right?
All right. Yeah.
So can you see?
Yeah. I see VS Code.
Yeah. Okay. So let me see. We were talking about extensions, and
yeah,
one thing I'd like to point out is how, like, as a developer, sometimes your best your editor should be like really an extension of yourself. And when you're trying to build stuff, your editor should really like help you out, you know, and that's why we choose the editors. We choose to use the editors we have, right? And okay, let me just start something new. So a new file. This is one of the reasons why I love VS Code and why I choose to use VS Code. Maybe this is not such a good idea, demoing live and raw like this. But one of the things, especially when you're a front-end developer, is things like this, right? In VS Code, where you can just spin up a whole document, right? And one hidden gem in VS Code, which I really love, is Emmet, the Emmet integration. And for anyone who is trying to be like, who wants to go down the path of being a front-end developer or anything, I think Emmet is something you really need to learn. And the good thing about Emmet is it comes for free if you know your CSS selectors. So then if we have something like this, I could probably just spin up a div.main with, okay, then the body, so I could spin up a header, and I could have a div.main, which is like a class, and in div.main, I could have an aside, which is a sidebar, and with this aside, that's a sidebar, maybe I want to have a div that has some content, and in content, I want to have a div that's a card, and I want to have maybe 5 cards. And for each of these cards, I want to have a div.card inner. And you see on the side that the Emmet abbreviation is like expanding. So this is what I'm building in Emmet, you know. And maybe in the inner, what do I want? This is some, for each inner, maybe I'll have a P with, this is some text. And after this, maybe I want to go out of here and have a footer, right? And you press tab, and this is like an entire, okay, the footer is in the wrong place, but this is an entire application just scaffolded. If you know what you want to build, this is a really quick way to get stuff done. You know, and I like it because the syntax is really so clean.
This is sorcery.
Yeah. One thing I like about Emmet 2 is if you do React a lot and you have lots of template literals, it really helps with that. So maybe you can have a div which is a to-do, and in that you want to have P, that's a title. So just to keep it BEM, to-do title, and you want to have another P, have another P, that's a to-do description, right? And maybe in your to-do description, what do you want? You want to have maybe description as your text, right? And you do this, and this is kind of like okay, I got this wrong again, but kind of like this, you can really build out React templates with this. So this is like your description variable, right? And for me, I find it much quicker and than just doing regular, just building it out in like the JS files themselves, because in the JS files, your alignment gets really horrible. When you use this, I mean, you get everything like for free. Yeah.
I see. So what's that convention, like the naming convention that you are using for the classes?
Yeah. So it's just like CSS selectors, right? So if you know your CSS selectors very well, you know that if you do this in a div in CSS, then you're like kind of referencing the child, like an immediate child, you know? So then this is kind of how the Emmet syntax works. It uses like the CSS selectors themselves. And if I do a dot, that's like a class. So I can have a dot title and I can have a dot highlighted, right?
Yeah.
Highlighted. And if I do this, I get the two classes on that div inside another div. And if I go back, then I could have a sibling of that div using the sibling selector, which is plus. And I could have whatever I want, which is a div, or I could have a span, or whatever. And you can use the caret character to go back up once you've gone down a level. So then now I'm back in the context of div, and I could have like another div, which is a sibling of the initial div, you see? And, or if you don't want to do this, you could put them in parentheses and you could keep the trees separate, see?
Oh.
Yeah, so
so Emmet is just full blown.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so if you know your CSS really well, you can actually, sometimes you can just like build an entire, like this could be like an entire HTML page and you just built it in like 1 second, you know? So you never like waste any time. And one of the extensions I use, which is really nice, is React standard style. So I like it because I choose that. Yeah, JavaScript React. Yeah, so when you do something like this, you can have a component, right? RCC, then I can just call it my component. From here, I can just be like conc, and I have a constructor. I can have bnd, and I can bind whatever I want. So if I have like a handle click, right, then I'm already like way ahead. I can do an est, I think, and I can have like an empty state object, and these component will. Why do I have two of these? Okay, I can do a CW. Okay, they're already here. So component will update. Amount. Component did mount. CDM. And it's basically this. This is what I really just wanted to share. These are some of the things that help me like speed up my development. There are lots of these. You have these snippets for Vue. You have these snippets for Jasmine. If you use Jasmine for your testing, I mean, they have so many like snippets for spies. They have them for watches, matches, everything. So when you're writing your test, I mean, everything is just like super smooth. And I think it helps you not make any like typing mistakes or errors. And that's why I really love snippets and using them in the development cycle. Because, I mean, it keeps everything clean, and it kind of reduces boilerplate for you, Yeah. So this is, basically what I wanted to share. I mean, briefly, yeah.
Good stuff. Yeah, so I think I have two questions here. Let me see. One question from David is he wants to know, when do you push to GitHub or share your work without other devs? So like when you're working on a project all by yourself, at what point do you push that code to GitHub? Is it when you're starting a new project, that's like initial commit, or after you've made a few cleanups?
Of course. It depends. I mean, it's different for everyone, right? There are people who like maybe push. They create the repo and then they connect it to the project immediately. I've done it sometimes, but what I also do a lot is I do a lot of commit amending. So if you know how to amend a commit and you make some mistakes, you just reset backwards. So you can always reset your branch back to whichever time you want, and just copy the improvements you've made and copy them back into like the previous ref. You understand? And then kind of just push that. So it depends on what you want to share. Maybe you want everyone to see, you're okay with people seeing maybe some of the mistakes or the not so great part of your code. Currently, I don't really care about the code not being pretty in the beginning or not making much sense in the beginning. It's how you progress the code, right? So I don't think lots of people are they're very defensive of their commit history, and they always try to clean it up. They try to squash, they try to get rid of commits that didn't make sense. But I mean, it really depends on you. Yeah.
All right. Another question from Nana Osafo. He wants to find out what's the minimum salary you should settle for when you want when you want someone to hire, I think that's more personal. That's like it's personal preference. You have to you must know what value you put on yourself to be able to. So he has a second part to his question, so I'm going to ask that one. He's asking, how do you tell you're a senior developer or a junior developer? Is it based on experience or?
Okay,
Yeah.
this one is an easy one. If you think you're a senior developer, and you're a junior developer, that's generally how you. I don't think there's a single senior developer who actually thinks they're a senior developer. They're regarded as senior developers by other people, but I mean, maybe quietly you might have some givens. What I've noticed is, and I always say this to Francis a lot, because we've talked a lot about my journey, and one of the turning points in my journey was when I thought I was a senior developer. Can you imagine? writing crappy PHP, and I was invited on a project that Francis had worked on. This is something I really must share, and I saw Francis's code and I thought it was machine generated code because the code was so well written and so well structured. And out of shame, I just couldn't jump on the project. I couldn't bear to mangle the beautiful code he had written. Yeah, but then that was one of the ways I found out about people like Francis, and I found out that programming is much deeper than just knowing how to add two numbers or how to write a very clever function. There's a lot more that goes into it. Readability,
You're far too kind, man. Yeah. I mean, to add to what MS Brian is saying, like, so this is a roadmap that I use quite a lot. Right? When I'm talking to people who are starting out as a web developer or starting out in software engineering, I use this roadmap to have conversations with them. Yeah, I mean, it pretty much captures most of the things that you have to deal with as a developer. And so once you identify you want to be a front-end developer, you go with the front-end roadmap. You learn all the things that you need to learn over there. And if you identify as a back-end developer, then you follow the roadmap and make sure that you are comfortable with most of the things that are listed over here. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be a pro on Python, Ruby, PHP, all these languages. I mean, it could be one or two of these languages. But just know that you're very proficient at it. You can do stuff. You can be productive in these programming languages or these technologies. Yeah. Then once you are okay with that, the thing is, the secret is you really have to build stuff. You need to create things. It's not like you're reading a textbook and every day you read a chapter or you read a full book and you say that you're a senior developer or you're a senior engineer. You have to build stuff, make mistakes, a whole lot of things. And in the process, you gain that confidence in yourself to not be afraid to say that you're a senior engineer. You've been doing, because the fact that you've been working as a developer for 8 years doesn't really mean that you're a senior engineer. It could mean that you're just a mediocre developer. You've been doing the same thing for 8 years. Because there are that kind of people who are very comfortable with wherever they are, and they don't do different things or new things. They just solve the same problem for 8 years. Yeah, and that really, in my opinion anyway, it doesn't make you a senior engineer because you've not been exposed to a whole lot of problems at different scales to have insights into things that a senior engineer must have an insight into. So, I mean, there's also a DevOps roadmap. Yeah, so you need to know things about how to set up infrastructure or even maintain one or add resources to an existing infrastructure, I mean, things like that. And somebody was asking who a full stack developer is. So back to that question, if you want to be a full stack developer, it means that you start from the top and you cover everything, every aspect over there, and you get to the bottom. Yeah, so you start from front end, you do all the stuff there.
Wow.
Yeah, then you come to back end, you do all the stuff there, then you go to yeah. I mean, when I was working at Mest, I mean, I brought this up during one of my lectures, and when most people were feeling intimidated, and I was telling them that the point of showing you this isn't to intimidate you, it's to paint a good picture. Because if when I started out, if I had something like this, it would have made a lot of difference.
Yeah.
So it's to show you this, that okay, this is the road ahead of you. So it's not time for you to act like you know something or you are doing something when you're actually not doing anything. When, like, let's say, instead of maybe learning the next thing that you need to know in your journey, you probably be there watching TV or watching some TV shows and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that you don't have fun. You have fun, yeah, all right. But know that these are the things that you have ahead of you. Because I can honestly tell you that I take so much joy in doing things the hard way. And you have no idea. You really have no idea how that is helping me currently. Because there's things that now I can do and I do, and it just marvels me. So if I hadn't done things from first principle when I was, starting out, or when I was doing, or when I wasn't at this level, how could I have figured out this? Because the thing is, the more you take shortcuts, you get to a point and you need to do something, and all the things that you're going to have to learn to be able to do that particular thing, it's just going to overwhelm you.
Yeah.
So now that you have little things to do, you try to do things. If it has to do with automation, you automate the little things. If it's even an alias, if just setting up an alias so that you don't have to type a very long command for so many times, just do it. If it has to do with being able to run a particular command on the terminal for many inputs, just learn how to loop, a list of files on the terminal. Because that, you never know. Because, I mean, once that becomes knowledge that you have, you can quickly apply it in a place that nobody even expects you to know that, to have that kind of knowledge. But because that is part of the knowledge, when you're thinking about how to solve a problem, you have that already in your head. You said, okay, let me do it this way. I mean, and that is something that will just, at some point, will just blow up your mind. Sometimes I find myself doing things that I say, wow, I mean, I didn't really have to think about this, but I'm really doing it.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I'm just rambling. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think there are lots of valid points in there. I mean, and the first thing you pointed out, but you first send me that link. I need the roadmap.
Share that link. Yeah, I mean, I go back to it once in a while to update myself on what to learn next when I have some downtime and when I'm not thinking about stuff. Because the learning really never stops. So if somebody has taken in that effort to put together a document like that, it has to be something that you take very seriously and work seriously towards. Because that can do so many things for you, really. Yeah. So I think now we just have to draw down the curtains on this, because we've been at this for over an hour. Yeah. Today, this one, I think this has been the longest exchange, and I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too.
When I was going to start this, I had some high expectations, and those expectations have been met. Yeah, I've had a lot of fun chatting with you. Yeah, I mean, it's very unfortunate that, well, not so unfortunate, but it's okay. Let me just say unfortunate. It's unfortunate that you're not currently in Ghana, because we are going to have our dopest meetup, like DevCongress meetup, on 21st at Marriott Hotel. And I mean, I'm so excited for this meetup. can you imagine we got oversubscribed? I mean, there are people actually on waiting list.
Wow.
Yeah, so amazing things are happening, and I'm very excited. And I mean, some of the topics that we're going, I think today the theme for this meetup is setting up for success. I mean, we all can use some success in our lives. So I mean, we're basically going to gather and talk about things that we need to know, things that we can do, people we need to connect with to be able to go to the next level. Because I mean, we need to move. We need to move to the level. If you are here, you have to get here. You have to get there. Yeah, because we need the tech community to be very vibrant and very useful. Yeah, and one way to do that is to help ourselves to connect with each other and learn from each other. So we have very awesome people coming on to give talks. We have some panel conversations on topics that has to do with even developing yourself as a developer. So as a developer, the rhyme, developing yourself as a developer to be able to position yourself for certain kinds of opportunities. Yeah, I mean, we have Edem Kumoji doing a talk on writing, CVs for developers. So we have Eunice. Eunice is a software engineer at Dreamover. She recently released her first book. Yeah, she's written a book on Kotlin. Yeah, and she's going to talk, do a talk on Kotlin, and also kind of do a mini launch of her book. Yeah. So I mean, I'm looking forward to this month's meetup. It's going to be really awesome. And I mean, if you happen to be watching this and you haven't made up your mind to come for the meetup, I mean, it's probably maybe too late now, because there are so many people who have expressed interest in the meetup, and as I said, we have a waiting list. And I'm sure after the event, videos will be available on YouTube for you to have a look at. Yeah, for you, for instance, I mean, we will record the videos and make them available online so that people like MS Brian can have access to watch whatever happens. Yeah.
But how will I have my book signed by Eunice?
Oh, yeah, I mean, that one.
A copy of Eunice's book and have it signed.
Probably have to have somebody send it to you after it's been signed. Yeah. It's been wonderful. It's been wonderful, MS Brian, to chatting with you on here today. Yeah. I wish you all the best in Berlin. Yeah.
Thank you.
And thank you for accepting the offer to be on the exchange. And I really had a very nice conversation and very interesting conversation.
This has been an honor for me. I mean, I should be the one saying thank you to you and to everyone, all the admins of the DevCongress community, Silent Works, Edem, Yao, Bubu, yourself. I mean, everyone, Tony Mobster, everyone who's keeping DevCongress alive, pulling in developers. I mean, trying their best to help the up and coming, better themselves and not fall into the same ditches that we fell into and had to find our own ways out. I think this is better than opening a church. For me, I mean, you guys could have had a church somewhere and be performing miracles, but I think this is a real miracle.
Yeah.
All
right. So everybody, this is a wrap. Thank you for joining today. So next month I have Rashida coming. Rashida too is also in Berlin. Yeah. So I mean, we are doing well. Yeah, we are doing well. So looking forward to have Rashida on here to also have a chat. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
A wrap.
It's been great. Thank you.